I lost $1 million in the casino. My journey to rock bottom didn't start with me picking up a chip, but with me allowing myself to believe that life has easy solutions. To make a long story short, everything went wrong. My name is Mark, and I want to share the story of how I lost $1 million in a casino, lost my family and self-respect, and most importantly, nearly lost myself. My life was never easy, but it wasn't catastrophic either. I was an average guy from a middle-class background, growing up in a small town in Ohio. As a child, I was always taught that hard work is the key to success. I studied diligently, found a stable job in sales, married the woman I loved. Everything was going well until I crossed paths with my past in the form of my old friend Tony. We hadn't seen each other for about 15 years. He had changed. Stylish clothes, a watch worth a few $1,000s, the car of his dreams. And then he threw me a line that marked the beginning of my downfall. "Are you still playing by the rules, Mark? It's time to make serious money." Tony started talking about how quick money had changed his life. He convinced me that there were simple solutions, that the world was divided into those who seize opportunities and those who work themselves to the bone for pennies. According to him, the casino wasn't a place for gambling, but a field for strategic thinking. I, someone who always valued stability and security, started feeling trapped in a routine, a dull, predictable life. It seemed to me that I was missing out if I didn't try something new. A few weeks later, I agreed to visit a casino with Tony. We went to Las Vegas in June 2018 to try our luck. The atmosphere there literally drained all my sobriety of thought. I had never seen such bright lights, luxurious halls, and a crowd that felt on top of the world. Everything was alluring and simultaneously dangerous. At first, I bet only $500, thinking that would be enough to test my luck. I won $3,000 on the first round of blackjack. It was the moment I felt I could control everything. But soon, doubts began to creep in. As a salesperson, I always relied on logic and precise calculations, but here I was guided purely by emotions. For the next few sessions, I either won or lost small amounts. However, each time I left the casino with a loss, I felt it was just a temporary setback. One more try, just a little more, and luck will turn around, I told myself. After a few months of trips to Vegas, my losses had already exceeded $30,000. My wife, Katie, began to notice changes. She asked where the money was going, why I had become more tense and irritable. I stubbornly believed that I was about to turn things around. Her warnings that we were losing everything only added to my sense of pressure. And instead of stopping, I looked for new ways to find money for the final win. The internal conflict only deepened. On one hand, I realized I was losing control of my life. On the other hand, it felt like the solution was so close. Every time I came home after another loss, I was haunted by feelings of guilt. I began lying to Katie about where I was getting the money, concealing my losses. However, my lies couldn't last forever. In March 2019, I took out a loan against the house we lived in for the first time. It was a desperate move, but at the time, it seemed like a smart investment. After all, just one big win and all our problems would be solved. It's hard to explain what was going on in my mind then. I was no longer thinking rationally. I was acting purely on hope. It was as if I was creating my own tragedy. Every lost bet intensified my addiction. Sometimes I tried to stop. I promised Katie I would never go to the casino again, that I would find other ways to make money. But every time I got a new paycheck or borrowed money, I was drawn back to Vegas. It was stronger than me. I started losing sleep and stopped seeing meaning in life. Despair became my constant companion. I no longer saw a way out. One night in June 2019, after another losing streak, I stood in the parking lot outside the casino and wondered if I should even go home. My mind was filled with thoughts that I was a complete failure, that Katie would never forgive me, and that the money I had lost would never come back. The final blow came in August 2019 when we lost our house. Creditors simply took it due to my debts. Katie left me, saying she could no longer live with someone who had ruined their lives. It seemed like the end. That night, I was alone in a cheap motel somewhere on the outskirts of Las Vegas, with an empty account and a broken heart. But deep down, I knew I had trapped myself. I started losing track of time, feeling like I was just floating along. Now, looking back, I see how my life fell apart into tiny pieces because of these constant bets. But at that time, I couldn't stop. My desire to find easy money turned into an addiction that destroyed everything I had built over the years. The irony is that I didn't even know how far it would go until it was too late. Reddit user comments. Sarah L90. It's incredible how quickly you can lose everything due to the desire to win more. My father went through something similar, and it was awful to see how it destroyed him. Jake the Snake. This sounds like a classic story of how easy money always turns out to be a trap. I read it and felt how it pulls you in. Real Dave 33. It's not just about the money, it's about addiction. Mark, I hope you managed to get out of this. I'm so sorry for what you went through. John Doe 777. I've dealt with similar problems myself. Casinos may seem like an easy path to success, but in the end, they only destroy lives. Thanks for sharing your story. After I lost the house in August 2019, I thought I had hit rock bottom, but in reality, it was just the beginning of my real downfall. By that point, I had already accumulated around $200,000 in debt, most of which were loans from private lenders. I had lost as much in the last 6 months on bets. Yet, I felt that I still had a chance to recover and take control of my life. In September 2019, I met Joe, a professional gambler, at one of the most prestigious casinos in Las Vegas, the Bellagio. He was in his 50s, with experience and confidence that radiated from every move he made. Joe saw me hesitating at the blackjack table and offered to help. "Kid, are you here to make money, or just to have fun?" he asked with a slight smile. I said I intended to recover my losses. He laughed and then seriously added, "If you're going to play, play big, not small." Joe knew how to convince. He convinced me that the key to winning was to play strategically, without fearing big bets. According to him, my approach was too cautious, and that's why I kept losing. We started playing together, and he taught me the right approach. "You have to lose first to learn how to win," was one of his favorite sayings. He played calmly and unemotionally, never showing any feelings, even when he lost large sums. I was impressed. I decided to trust him. Over the next few weeks, I began investing more and more money into the game. During the day, I tried to find a new job to have some stable income, but most of my time and thoughts were consumed by gambling. By October 2019, I was betting $20,000 per evening, hoping for a big win. Joe was there, supporting and encouraging me when I lost. "The main thing is not to give up. If you lost now, it means luck is waiting for you ahead," he would say. Losses became more regular, and each time I thought it was just a temporary setback. I convinced myself that having invested so much money, I simply couldn't stop halfway. I just needed a bit of luck, and I would turn everything around. Meanwhile, Katie continued calling, trying to find out where I was and what was happening. Her voice was filled with pain and despair. She couldn't understand why I couldn't stop, even after we had lost everything. But I was convinced that if I stopped now, it would all be lost forever. In November 2019, the situation worsened. I took out a new loan of $50,000 from a private lender at outrageous interest rates. At the time, it seemed like the only way out. I remember the day the money arrived in my account, and I went straight to Caesar's Palace. Joe was there too. He said it was a perfect day for gambling. We sat down at the table, and I immediately placed a $25,000 bet on one hand. The result? I lost within minutes. But Joe convinced me that I was on the right track and shouldn't back down. However, every time I lost, my sense of panic grew. There was no money left to live normally. I had to eat at cheap places and sleep in cars or inexpensive motels. I felt everything around me falling apart. But at the same time, I couldn't stop. It was like constantly fighting with myself. The mind said to stop, but emotions and addiction pushed me further. Joe continued to play his role, fueling my ambitions and supporting me in moments of weakness. December 2019 brought even more losses. I realized I could no longer get loans from banks or acquaintances. I began selling the things I had left after the divorce, trying to find some money for another game. Joe continued to be around, although I sometimes noticed that his support was not as genuine as before. He no longer believed in my chances, but wasn't going to stop me. That's when I realized he was just using me for his own benefit. He was probably betting on my failure. In the last few weeks of 2019, I basically lived at the casino. Instead of celebrating Christmas and New Year, I was trying to recover some money. Nothing helped. My inner world had completely crumbled, and every loss felt like a blow to the heart. I no longer thought about winning. I just played, hoping to end this endless losing streak. In January 2020, I finally realized that I had no money left. Everything I had was gone: the money, the house, and the family. I had even lost my self-respect. I continued going to the casino, but now I just watched others, trying to understand why they were lucky, and I wasn't. I began to think there was some kind of conspiracy, that the casino was intentionally against me. But deep down, I knew the problem wasn't the casino, it was me. Joe vanished from my life as suddenly as he had appeared. He simply stopped coming to the casino, and his phone became unreachable. He had probably found a new pupil. I was left alone with no money and no plan to get out of this hole. In February 2020, I first thought about suicide. It seemed like the only way out, but something inside me still held on. Perhaps it was hope that everything could still be fixed. It took me almost 2 years to realize that my attempts to recover were just an illusion. The more I tried, the more I lost. All my belief that luck would return was nothing but a lie. I realized the problem was that I couldn't accept my losses and kept pushing forward, even though everything was telling me to stop. Now, looking back at those times, I see how easy it would have been to stop everything. If I had stopped after the first losses, I could have preserved my family, my house, and my health. But I was blind to the obvious. Instead of admitting defeat, I kept digging the hole deeper and deeper. It was a path to self-destruction, and only now do I understand how close I was to losing everything. Reddit, user, comments, spiral downward. This story is really powerful. I've seen similar situations with friends who fell into debt because of gambling. It's hard to read, but it's important for people to understand the danger. Lost in Vegas? I'm shocked at how quickly it can all spiral out of control. Joe clearly took advantage of your situation. Hang in there, man. You can still get out. Debt crushed me. My situation is similar, though I didn't go to such extremes. The feelings are all too familiar. That moment when it seems like just a little more and everything will be okay. But it never is. Run from the table. Casinos are a trap. Your experience confirms that 100%. I hope you've found the strength to get out of it. After Joe disappeared, I was left alone with my debts and the ruins of my life. The February night of 2020 in Las Vegas was as cold and piercing as my inner state. I had no hope left, and I felt like I had lost everything: the money, the house, the family, and worst of all, my humanity. But even after that, I couldn't stop. My addiction had taken over so completely that I began looking for new ways to get money for one more attempt to recover my losses. By contacting old acquaintances, I found a few private lenders willing to give me money at exorbitant interest rates. These weren't banks, but real predators who knew the state I was in. In March 2020, I took out a final loan of $100,000. The interest was 30% per month. But at that point, I didn't care. I was convinced that this time I would recover my losses. My last big game took place on March 15, 2020, at the Wynn Las Vegas. This casino always seemed more elite and out of reach to me. I thought the atmosphere in the place might change my luck. I walked in with a single thought: this is my last chance. If I win, I'll start over. If I lose, it's the end. It was the moment when I decided to bet everything. I remember sitting at the blackjack table, holding $100,000 in chips. My heart was pounding like never before, but I maintained a mask of calm on my face. There were a few other players at the table who didn't even suspect that this game was a matter of life or death for me. The first few hands I won, rising to $150,000. This gave me hope that everything was going according to plan. I felt the adrenaline pushing me to make bigger bets. However, luck turned away from me. Hand after hand, the amount started to decrease rapidly. When only $50,000 was left, I realized I was on the brink of complete collapse. But instead of stopping and saving something, I decided to make one final bet: all or nothing. I put all my money on one hand, convinced that this would change everything. The cards were dealt, and I saw a pair of eights in front of me. The dealer showed a 10. In the world of gambling, this is called a bad hand, but I decided to split the pairs, doubling my bet. That was the moment I made a fatal mistake. After the split, I received a 5 on one hand and a 10 on the other. My total was 18 and 19. Pretty strong hands. However, the dealer revealed the next card, and it was a queen. His total became 20, and I lost. Everything happened in a matter of seconds, but those seconds changed my life forever. I sat at the table, staring at the empty space in front of me, feeling the last drop of hope drain away. I was engulfed by a sense of complete emptiness. I couldn't believe that everything I had built over the years had crumbled in an instant. Having lost the last of my money, I realized I had truly hit rock bottom. No other resources were left. I left the casino around 4 a.m. The streets of Vegas were empty, and the city looked like a set from an apocalypse movie. I felt utterly destroyed. All that remained was debt, fear, and disappointment. I was no longer the person I had been a few years ago. All my attempts to recover had only led to losing everything I once had. In the following weeks, I realized that my addiction had taken more than just money. It had destroyed my marriage, taken my home, and turned me into a person I despised. I stopped keeping in touch with friends and lost contact with my family. My parents didn't even know where I was. I was alone, and each new day became a struggle to find a reason to keep living. I began looking for work to at least survive, but the COVID-19 pandemic only complicated the situation. I worked briefly in food delivery and then in construction, but all the money I earned went towards paying off the debts I had accumulated over the years. My life had become a vicious cycle with no room for joy or hope for the future. I no longer believed I could fix my situation. The culmination of all this came with a call from one of the creditors in May 2020. He said that if I didn't repay the money within a week, I would face serious problems. I knew this wasn't just an empty threat. These people didn't play games. They were willing to go to extremes, and I knew it. Fear paralyzed me. For the first time, I considered that maybe the only way out was to simply disappear. This final loss forced me to face the truth. I realized that all my decisions had been wrong. Every time I thought I was in control, I only deepened my problem. I was trapped by my own thinking, constantly hoping for a miracle that would never come. I now saw that recovering was just a myth that casinos sell to people like me. In this world, there is no such thing as easy money, and all I had received was the ruin of my own life. Losing $1 million in one night was the point of no return. It was the moment I realized I could no longer continue living in this nightmare. I had destroyed everything I once had, and there was no point in continuing this game. It wasn't just a fall. It was complete self-destruction. Now, all that was left was to face the consequences of my actions and try to start over, if that was even possible. After that fateful night at Wynn Las Vegas, when I lost the last $100,000, it felt like everything was over. I was left with no money, no job, and no hope for the future. My wife Katie had left, taking everything we had built together. It was a true point of no return. I had become a shadow of the person I once knew. All that remained were debts, fear, and an endless sense of guilt. My sister Anna, who was living in another state at the time, only learned about my situation a few months later. We had long stopped communicating, and she didn't know how far my addiction had gone. In June 2020, after another threatening call from creditors, I realized that I could no longer handle it on my own. I called Anna and told her everything. She was shocked but did not turn away from me. Her support became my last lifeline. Anna invited me to come stay with her in Portland, Oregon. It was my only chance to break free from the vicious cycle, so I agreed. She helped me sell the remaining belongings and gather the minimum needed for the move. I arrived in Portland in July 2020, completely broken, with over $500,000 in debt and no way to pay it off. Anna found me a small room in her apartment and started looking for ways to help me get back to a normal life. The first few months were the hardest. I was haunted by thoughts of how I had destroyed everything. I couldn't sleep, constantly replaying moments when I could have stopped. But even in this state, the addiction continued to torment me. Every time I saw an advertisement for a casino or heard about big wins, I felt the urge to try again. But this time, I decided to fight. Anna insisted that I see a gambling addiction specialist. At first, I resisted, thinking it was a waste of time. But eventually, in September 2020, I began attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. It was a tough decision, but it was the first step toward recovery. I met other people who had gone through similar experiences, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that I wasn't alone in my struggle. During rehabilitation, I began to realize how deeply rooted my addiction was. It wasn't just a problem with money, but something more, a way to escape reality, to find an easy path to success. I understood that I wasn't playing just for the win, but because of an internal emptiness. Gambling had become my answer to all life's difficulties, and it was this that had destroyed my life. Since September 2020, I have been attending meetings 3 times a week. Progress has been slow, but gradually I began to feel changes. I had to acknowledge my guilt to myself, to my family, and to those who had suffered because of my actions. Rebuilding my relationship with Anna was the first step. She saw my efforts and supported me, even when I faltered. Her faith in me helped me not to break down completely. In October 2020, I found my first job after nearly 2 years of unemployment. It was a basic position at a local supermarket. But for me, it was an important step. I started to return to normal life, feeling that I could once again control my actions. Every earned dollar was a reminder of how hard real work is and how futile it was to lose everything in the pursuit of easy money. Throughout 2021, I continued working on myself. Of course, I wasn't able to eliminate all my debts, but with Anna's help and through restructuring programs, I was able to negotiate more realistic repayment terms. This didn't mean that everything became easy. There were moments when it seemed like nothing was changing, and the temptation to try my luck in the casino returned. But I learned to recognize these moments and seek support. In September 2021, I completed a year-long rehabilitation program and officially received a certificate of course completion. For me, it was a symbol of a new chapter in life. I began setting realistic goals to restore my health, find stable employment, and start living without looking back. It wasn't easy, but every day without gambling was a small victory. Now, in 2023, I can say that I am slowly but surely rebuilding my life. I found a new job with a logistics company and have finally started saving money for the future. My relationship with Anna has improved, and we have become close again, as we once were. Katie is no longer in my life, and I understand that I need to accept this loss. I no longer seek shortcuts and realize that true success is not winning at the casino, but the slow and difficult work on oneself. The lessons I've learned over these years have changed me forever. Money gained easily will never bring lasting happiness. Casinos, like any form of gambling, only create an illusion of control. In reality, it is a trap that pulls you in, and the longer you stay in it, the harder it is to escape. Now, I know that there are no shortcuts to success. Everything of true value requires time and effort. If you are reading this story and recognize yourself, know that there is a way out. It's a hard path, but it's worth it. The main thing is not to be afraid to seek help and admit that you are not in control of the situation. I managed to start again, and if I could do it, so can you. Never lose hope, even when everything seems hopeless. Reddit, comments, new life ahead. Thank you for sharing this story. It's very similar to what I'm going through right now. It's inspiring to see that even after such a crash, it's possible to find the strength to recover. Recovering addict. I've been through something similar and can confirm. Support groups and help from loved ones are what save you. Hang in there and don't give up. Too far gone. Your words about there being no easy money are the truth that many don't want to accept. I'm glad you managed to get your life back on track. Sister support. Anna is a real hero in this story. It's good that you had someone who didn't abandon you in the toughest times. I hope your story helps others find their way out.